And welcome back to another video of jPlay. I am Marcus and today I will preview some rounds of Tides of Infamy, which is about to start on Kickstarter, or maybe already has. And it is all about har and yo ho ho. So let's check it out. In Tides of Infamy, each player commands a fleet of different vessels, from the mighty man of war to the sneaky sloop, and they try to gain a preset number of so-called marks of infamy. And whoever reaches this number will be the most infamous pirate in the Caribbean Sea. At least, I think the game is settled there, but after all, it's some kind of a pirate game, so where else should the action take place? I already prepared the game board for a 3-player game, which is a random setup, and most areas of the gaming area is still hidden in some kind of fog of war. Only the Pirate Bay is known to the players, as this is basically their starting position, and is also directly connected to the various player harbor tiles, where the players keep their ships whenever they are damaged or defeated in a sea battle, or when they are being returned here in order to exchange the goods for marks of infamy. Basically the victory points in this game. But enough of the forward, let's dive into the actual gameplay of Tides of Infamy. As usual, I will perform some demo rounds in order to give you a good idea about how it plays, and I guess I will explain any rules as I play. Keep in mind though, I only had some beta rules, some things might have changed in the meantime, or I simply missed some of the rules. Of course, you are looking at prototype components, whereas this one already looks pretty polished, I guess. In a 3-player game, the first player to collect 17 marks of infamy will be the most infamous pirate. I think I already explained that to you. Here we see a little type, but again, this goes back to the prototype nature of this game at this point in time. In a 2-player game, this would be 20 marks of infamy, and with all 4 players, this would be 15 marks of infamy. Keep in mind there is a team variant though. I think then you have to collect in your team 25 of those marks. For each ship that is currently not damaged, and normally you mark your damaged ship by laying them on the side on your shipyard, but in this case all ships are intact. Basically, you are about to receive 1 movement card, though normally it's really 1 card per ship. And of course the same applies for black and for blue, who currently carries the last player marker. The last player marker is important in order to understand who triggered the battle, because this will happen within the movement phase, which we are about to start right now. As mentioned, the player harbor tiles are directly connected to those Pirate Bay tiles here. And I think in a 3 to 4 player game there are 2 of them, so somewhere here on the game board there is 1 more. And basically your first movement would be from here, the centerpiece of this Pirate Bay, to any adjacent space on the same tile here. And this is the only exception where you are allowed to move diagonally. Normally you would only move orthogonally. As red is the starting player, he will play his first movement card, and you're allowed to play 1 normal movement card per ship. There are some special movement cards later on which allow you to play 2 cards, but normally your ship will only move once per any given game round. So let's start by doing that. So we play this card here, and this card shows a movement value of 4, though any ship that you will play this card on would be allowed to move up to 4 spaces. So let's grab our man of war here and place it on the center space of this Pirate Bay. This is not supposed to be an actual movement, and as of now we would start moving. So let's move the ship 2 spaces here to the south, then we would reveal the next tile, and you see those little arrows here, those are the directions how you have to place those tiles when entering those. And here we see 2 different special spaces. For once we have this rock space here. This is supposed to be impassable, so it's just blocking off the map. And on the other side of the tile there is a so-called portal. As long as there's only 1 portal on the board, you cannot do anything, you just treat it as a normal space. As soon as a second portal shows up somewhere on the map, you are allowed to jump between those portals, basically back and forth. But we still have 2 more movement points left, so I think let's move the ship 1-2 spaces further down to the south. This is the starting hand for the black player, and here we have a repair his ship card. Right now he doesn't have any damaged ship, but you are allowed to store one of those besides your player harbor, and then you would be allowed to redraw a card from that. Though you normally really always have 3 normal movement cards, which is definitely a good thing. So let's see. Okay, this is a normal movement card again, and I think we will also start with our man of war, or should we? No, we take this sloop of war, I guess it's called. So let's start with this ship. Place it here on the starting space of the pirate bay. Then we move 1, 2 to this space here. Again, we have to flip it. This is a normal ocean tile, so this was 1, 2, and then with 3 we will move 1 space up to the north. Now it's the blue player's turn. He will also start with his sloop of war, and I think he will play this card here. That's a movement of 2. Normally you would now assign those pirate luck cards, but you don't do that in the very first round of the game, so we will just ignore this icon here. I definitely will show that too in one of the next turns, I guess. So we will move 1-2 spaces up here to the north, and guess what? Here we have our second portal already, and we are really unlucky. I haven't seen any treasures or any of those contraband tokens so far, so the game board is pretty open still. Okay, though, this will be discarded. Coming back to the red player, he will also now use his sloop of war. He will play this card here that shows the movement value of 3, and he will move 1, 2 spaces here, and finally we have a card or a tile that shows some actual resources. And as soon as an island will be revealed through this exploration here, we will place the appropriate token on the island here. Though this is a piece of silver, and a piece of silver can be traded for 1 mark of infamy. Not exactly great, but at least a starting point. Okay, it's the black player's turn. He will send in his man of war, and he's about to grab that piece of silver. So he will play the movement card with a value 4. Now you can see it. Remember, from this pirate bay you are allowed to move diagonally, so he will move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here to this island, and then he would be allowed to take this piece of silver with him. Now, one additional information is important, and those are those current symbols. So you are not allowed to leave this island through the north or to the south in this case, only here to the east or to the west, which is being depicted by those little current symbol. Pretty neat, a little mechanic. Next is blue, and I think he will also, no, he will take his bylander here. He will play the movement card that's worth 3 movement point. He will move 1, 2, and then here to the east. Let's see what we discover. And again, we have 1 piece of cargo here, and this is the gold resource. That's awesome, of course. So let's place the gold token here, and it's easily been, let's say, mixed up with those treasure tokens here, but I think when you directly compare them, you can see the difference. But again, keep in mind, these are prototype components. For blue, it was theoretically pretty cool to discover this island, but of course the other players now also can move ahead, and I think blue should stay here. So he discovered this piece here, so this is a good thing, though he's kind of protecting the direction because this entrance here is blocked through those rocks here. But of course, during the next turn, the red player might send his man of war here to the east, and he might really consider this because gold is worth 2 marks of infamy. It's definitely not the best idea, but I think red will send his bylander in order to intercept that man of war here. Yeah, let's try that. So he will play his movement card. That's worth 4 movement point. He will move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here to the north and will intercept or try to intercept that mighty man of war here. The battle will not be triggered before the player carrying the last player marker has made his turn in this turn basically, or did his action in this turn. This is really important, so other players could still send in their ships in order to also battle that space. I think black wants to help his man of war. It's definitely more powerful than this Spylander here, but I think why take the risk? And there is a so-called Armada effect in the battle. So whenever you are engaged in a battle and one of your ships is on the same tile as your ships, then you can gain some additional battle cards, which is definitely powerful. Keep in mind so that you're not allowed to move through or move on the same space as one of your own ships, so this is definitely not allowed. So let's do that. We will play this card here. This would allow the Bylander to move 1, 2 spaces here. That's sufficient, so basically he's now on the same tile as this man of war. This would allow him to draw 2 additional cards. And then it's basically the last ship of the blue player. He was really a bit unlucky with his card draw because he only had these medium range cards, so no 4 was there, I guess, only 2s and 3s. This is definitely kind of a problem, but okay, we have to deal with that. So that's 1, 2, and then we move here to the west. Let's see what we discover, and here is the second pirate bay. This is interesting. And just like the starting pirate bay, this centerpiece will also beam you directly to your home port, but just consider it as your second pirate safe harbor, I guess. Okay, the blue player had his turn, and it's really important to mention this does not have to be his last turn. So if the battle would have been triggered before in the very first round, for example, then the battle would have been resolved after the very first turn of this game. But in this case, coincidence, basically this last ship was the trigger for this battle of the man of war against this poor little Bylander here. Now you have to see that the Bylander was the attacker. He moved into the space of the black player. But in respect to how many cards you draw, this really doesn't make any difference, as the man of war draws 7 cards for the attack or 7 cards for the defense. So in this case it really doesn't matter. Keep in mind we have the Armada effect for the black player because he moved his own Bylander to the same time. This means he's allowed to draw 9 cards for his defense. And red attacks with his Bylander here, so he's only allowed to draw 5 battle cards. Later on in the game you are allowed to exchange those face-up pirate luck cards if you have some of them to gain additional battle cards, so this is really something worthwhile to do it. And yeah, I think this is the best way to spend those, but right now, as we are still in our very first round, we won't see that happening. Okie dokie, let's draw the 5 battle cards for the red player and 9 cards for the black player. That's definitely a lot. In the rules there are 2 variants for resolving battle. The basic one is being scuttle, and I think it's really something you should only play with younger players, I guess, because it's just comparing the highest card. The more interesting one is the red sky variant, which is coming close to a poker variant. I think it's basically pretty much the same, of course, with some other colors, and they are basically 5 different suits rather than only 4. So let's do that now with the red sky variant here, because this is definitely way more interesting. And similar to some well-known poker variants, there is one community card that basically belongs to all the participating player in this battle. In this case we have a 3 of rum. And those are the cards for the red player. Not entirely great. He doesn't have any 3 on his hand. Of course, I'm only showing that to you. Of course, all the other players will keep their cards hidden from each other. And the first thing that you are allowed to do is to discard 2 of those cards and draw 2 new. And I think, I think this is what I will do. We have a street. Okay, that's definitely not entirely bad. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Straight is not entirely great, but I think it's the best what we can do now. And this is some kind of a bluffing situation here. So we could say, hey, our card is so awesome, we are not discarding any cards. And I think this is what red will do. He will tell the black player, hey, I'm not discarding any cards now. Black will not follow this example. He will discard 2 battle cards and will draw 1, 2 as a replacement. And then both players will reveal their first 2 cards. And I think this is called the cannon phase. So we will reveal 2 cards for red and 2 cards for black. This is definitely a mark for the black player, so red sees, hey, he has at least 3 of a kind. He could also bluffing, of course, so he might see, okay, maybe that's definitely something. Maybe he doesn't have more, and definitely a straight is more valuable than those 3-pounders here. So, and now we come to the next phase, and this would be the surrender phase. So all participating player could now decide to surrender. And surrendering can be a pretty tactical move, because normally you would have to drop all of your cargoes on the same space. You would leave 1 mark of infamy basically on this one, because this is what you get when you defeat an enemy. But at least your ship doesn't get damaged, for example. You're not losing a turn or something like that. And you're also allowed to move 1 space ahead. So sometimes, so you could bring him, for example, closer to this undiscovered tile over there. And I think for black, it's pretty clear. He says, no, I won't surrender. And red is still thinking if black is bluffing or not. He drew 9 cards. He exchanged 2 of those 9 cards, so overall he has definitely some better odds, but we are pretty early in the game, and I think let's take the risk. Red will say, no, I will not surrender. And so the players play 2 more cards from their hand. This is now the boarding phase. So red will go first. He will play those 2 cards indicating, hey, I have a straight. Do you have more than 3 of a kind? And with an evil grin, black player plays 2 more of those 3 cards. So he has now 5 of a kind. And this is definitely more than enough to bring down the poor bylander of the red player, who will be now directly sent back to the shipyard of the red player and will stay keeled over, which means he will, or this ship will lose the next turn. You could now play one of your ship repair cards. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any of those, and you're also allowed to discard any face up pirate luck cards in return of repairing your ship basically, but we also don't have any pirate luck cards in play. If you're losing the game, the battle as a defender, your ship is just being sent back to your harbor, so you're allowed to reuse it during the next turn. But still, of course, you would lose any cargo that you were carrying. As black won this battle, he's been awarded with the very first mark of infamy, meaning he's already in the lead here, but of course 1 mark of infamy is basically nothing. And yeah, this was basically the very first round of Tides of Infamy. You already saw your first fight, and I think I will play 1 additional round in order to probably show you some of those pirate luck cards. The first player marker will be moved to the next player, and of course the same applies for the last player marker. We will just stand up the keeled over ship, so in the next turn we would be allowed to place this ship on the harbor, and as of then we would be allowed to move it again. We will also deal out new movement cards, and you only get a movement card per ship in your harbor that is actively on the board, and this ship is in the shipyard, so it's out of the game basically. So red only draws 2 of those movement cards, but black and blue both get their full 3 movement cards. Black is the starting player, and he drew one of those special movement cards which would allow him to move the man of war 1 space, Bylander 2 spaces, or sloop of war 3 spaces, and then we would still be allowed to draw again, because this is not considered to be a normal movement card, and this is really a very powerful card. So let's see, and I think, let's see, what do we have? Do we have a 4? No, we don't have a 4. So I think this is pretty important. So I think I will use this special movement card to play it on the man of war. And this is tough. So yeah, I think I will move the man of war 1 space up here to the north. So the idea is to get around the red player here again, who might still go after us one more time. This card says it will be discarded, but he is still allowed to draw a replacement card, and again he's so lucky. This is a movement card worth 5 movement points. Now it's blue player's turn, and blue really wants to go after this golden resource here. So he will move 1-2 spaces here to this island. This doesn't stop your movement, he still has 2 more movement points left, so he will move back 1-2 spaces up to the north. Again, we must not forget the direction of the current here. Red will play this card here on the man of war. First of all, it's worth 3 movement points, so let's move the ship 1. Oh, that's good. 1, 2. And on this pirate harbor we find 3 pieces of contraband, and luckily we have sent our man of war here, and the man of war is allowed to carry 6 of those tokens, or up to 6 of those tokens. This is definitely a good cargo, piece of cargo we have on board, and each of those black contraband is worth 1 mark of infamy, as long as some of those tiles are revealed. When all of those tiles are revealed later on, those contraband tokens are even worth 2 marks of infamy each. We still have 1 more movement point left, and I think we will move the ship 1 space up to the north again. Still, we have to deal with the pirate luck card here, and the next thing that you would do is to choose a tile where at least one of your opponents is being present, and for each ship present there, the opposing player would have to draw 1 pirate luck card. And I think red will just choose this tile here, which means those 2 ships will have to draw 1 pirate luck card. The captains of those ships can decide whether they want to draw 1 or don't want to. And right now in this prototype, I think it's 50-50 chance that you get a good or a bad card. I think this will change with the final product in respect to more bad luck events basically. So I think this is right now not too good of a deal basically to play those cards on your opponents, because sometimes really you do them something good. But again, you have to decide whether you want to do that. If you don't want to draw that card, you have to discard 1 of your cargo tokens. Of course, this is not possible for the Bylander here, so we will start with this one, so we cannot do anything about that. And we will draw our first pirate luck card. And this says, you hear shrieking off in the distance as you stumble upon a deserted ship. The ship belonged to a wealthy duchess and is laden with precious metals. Add 1 brown treasure chest token to the ship. Awesome. So you see, sometimes it's not really cool to play those cards, but you cannot help it. So we will place 1 treasure chest token on this Bylander here. This is also worth 1 victory point. And additionally, the black player is allowed to keep this card in front of him. So for once, he now can discard this card in order
to gain additional battle card later on, or you could use it to repair your ship. And then I think black decides to also draw a card for the man of war here, so he does not discard any of his cargo on the board. And here it says, something immense brings your ship to a standstill. By the time the mysterious beast reveals itself, it is too late. Your ship is already destroyed. Move ship to harbor, tokens stay on space. So this is definitely what red tried to achieve with this one. So the silver token remains on space here. This ship is being sent back to the harbor, and he's allowed to draw his second pirate luck card face up in front of him. And for each pirate luck card that you have in front of you after the first one, you're also awarded 1 mark of infamy. And in this prototype there show different symbols here. I think this will be changed in the later game as well, because basically it doesn't matter what symbol it shows, they're all worth 1 victory point. But as the man of war is not keeled over, he can directly use it again because he has not played a normal movement card on it this turn. So I think we will send the ship back to the Pirate Bay. And again, we will play a tough movement card. This is the 5er basically. So he will move 1, 2, 3. He will pick up his token again. He has still 2 more movement points left, 4 and 5. Unfortunately, this was not enough to bring the good back to the Pirate Bay. In this case, he would get an additional mark of infamy for exchanging those goods. Blue sees that red has some nice contraband laden on his man of war, so he will also send the man of war 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces down to the space here. So we see, or we will see, another battle between those 2 players in the near future. And unfortunately, red doesn't have any cards to move his sloop of war down here to this tile in order to support his man of war. So I think, let's play the normal movement card worth 2 movement points to send this ship 1, 2. Oops, where is the arrow? There's the arrow. 1, 2 spaces up here to the north. And there we see our next teleport space. Red carries the last player token, so we would see if we would have to resolve any battles. And guess what? We do have a battle between the red and the blue player. In this case, blue was the attacker. Again, we would have to draw the appropriate cards for the attacker and the defender. In this case, it's man of war against the man of war, so both parties gain 7 battle cards. And again, we will have 1 community card. That's the 1 of cannons here. So let's see if any of those players will discard 2 of their cards in order to redraw 2 of them. And I guess blue will do so. So that's 1, 2 replacement cards. And I guess red will do the same. He will discard those 2 cards and will draw those 2 replacement cards. And then it's time to enter the cannon phase. So the attacker will play 2 of his cards. That's a pair of 6s with a 1. Red is not feeling impressed, I guess. So let's see what he will do. And he will play a 3 and a 4. For once this could mean, hey, this is another straight. But blue also sees, hey, these are 3 cannon symbols, so he might go after a flush. And a flush, basically no quarter, is definitely pretty high. And I know what blue has on his hand. So I think when we now come to the surrender phase, blue will say, okay, hey, I give up, I surrender. This means he will leave 1 mark of infamy on this space, and now he will be allowed to move 1 space, available space in any direction basically. And I think he's feeling, maybe in the next turn I might try to go after this ship again. So why not move my man of war back here to the north, because somehow he has to bypass me. Of course, red could also decide to take the passage over this tile here and then make it back to the Pirate Bay in order to secure 3 additional victory points. But of course, he already got his first mark of infamy, which he will place close to his harbor. Then it's black again, and I think black wants to secure his treasure here. He's close to the Pirate Bay, so why not? So he will play his movement card that's worth 3 movement points to move his ship 1, 2 spaces here to the Pirate Harbor. So this will mean it will be teleported into the harbor, and then he would be allowed to exchange the goods on his ship. So this goes back to the reserve, and for this treasure he would gain an additional mark of infamy, which also means he already has 3 of those, so he's clearly in the lead. Then it's the blue player, and this time he was definitely more lucky in respect to his movement card, so he will play this 5 to his Bylander. This is the last ship he has, which still hasn't moved with a normal movement card, so let's move him 1, 2. Oh, 2 spaces here, and this was really unlucky. Wow, he's completely blocked by those rocks to the south. There is this Bylander. The Bylander doesn't carry any cargo, so I'm not so sure if he wants to deal with that. I think he still has 3 more movement points left, so I think he will move back 1, 2, 3 spaces here to the portal, and maybe will teleport down to this base to continue his voyage here to the south. As one of red ships is in the shipyard, his turn is basically over, and black was lucky enough to draw this special movement card, so he still has 1 last movement card left. This is only worth 2 movement points, so we will play this here on the Bylander to move it 1, 2 spaces here to the space with the gulls. And really, I like the artwork on those tiles a lot. They really add a lot of theme to that. Of course, sometimes I wish there would be more interaction with those things. So for example, here you see the tentacles here, but those tentacles basically don't do you anything, but the rule says they're just nice to look at. And this was already the 2nd round, so again we will move the first player marker and the last player marker accordingly. We will send the damaged ship back to the harbor, so as of now red player is allowed to use it again, which also means he would be allowed to draw 3 movement cards, and then we would immediately start our 3rd round. But I think I will end my walkthrough of Tides of Infamy here. I think I showed you most of the mechanics. There are way more of those islands, there are way more of those resources. I haven't shown you a battle where 3 or more players, of course this is a free-to-play game, but 3 players would fight against each other. It's definitely also adds a little bit more dimension to the overall game. But I think this walkthrough demonstrated you how the game actually feels. So I really hope you enjoyed my little preview of Tides of Infamy and got a little impression about the actual gameplay. One piece of advice in respect to on how to resolve battles, I would definitely recommend the Red Sky rules. But of course, this depends on whom you play with. The basic scuttle rules are great for younger players who enjoy comparable single cards and are not necessarily poker pros. And of course, they're much quicker to deal with. As you might have seen, the components look pretty cool already, but some of them may or may not change until the final release. But I think you know that for yourself. If I piqued your curiosity, check out the Kickstarter campaign. Of course, you will find a link in the description of this video. Hope to see you soon in one of my next videos, and until then, bye bye.